Hello and welcome to another of Esri's public safety webinar series. We use these webinars as a way to promote the use of GIS in public safety agencies and for day-to-day responses, disaster response, and non-emergency activities as well. We are today going to discuss incident intelligence, development, and reporting using GIS. And we're very lucky today to have quite a few esteemed guests with us. And we'll start with introductions. And I'll turn it over to Renee Bernstein. Renee?
Good afternoon. Thanks, Mike. My name is Renee Bernstein. I'm a solution engineer on our public safety team. I have been with Esri just about 10 years. I am also a member of our DRP team and assist when we have disasters or incidents at hand. So welcome, and I will turn it back to Mike.
Thank you. And again, we have some special guests with us today, and we'll turn it over to Chris Ferner, our wildland fire specialist, to introduce our guests. Chris?
Thank you, Mike. As Mike mentioned, I go by Fern most of the time, and I'm also on the Esri public safety team along with Mike and Renee, and I'm Esri's wildland fire specialist. I work with agencies around the world working on preparing for, responding to, and recovering from wildfire events. I'm also part of the Esri Disaster Response Program, or DRP, and on that team, I'm the information manager. I'm thrilled that we were able to have Jeff and Manon join us from the Southern Area Type 1 Blue team. Jeff, would you mind introducing yourself a little bit better?
Yeah, thanks, Fern. My name is Jeff Adams. I'm with the United States Fish and Wildlife Service. I'm the current regional fire planner for the Southwest region. I've been working with incident management teams for all risk, all hazard, and wildland fire specifically for almost 20 years. I'm currently a situation unit leader and planning section chief trainee for the Southern Area Blue Team. And I've been an incident commander for several agency responses, including Hurricane Harvey, the Texas City Y oil spill, and the New World screw worm event.
Thanks, Jeff. Manon, can you introduce yourself?
Sure. I'm Manon Dodd. I'm a researcher at Virginia Tech with the Center for Advanced Innovations in Agriculture and the Entomology Department. I lead a software development and IT operations team, and we provide location intelligence and data management services for 2 national forest health protection programs. I've also been supporting wildfire and natural disaster response as a GIS specialist with the Southern Area Blue Team for over 10 years now.
Thanks. Back to you, Mike.
Oh, thanks, Fern. And I am Mike Cox. I'm your Director of Fire and EMS Solutions for Esri. Come to you after 27 years in a metro-sized department in Central Virginia. But consider me your GIS liaison officer, if you will. So certainly, get our contact information and reach out anytime you may have a need, preparing for or during a response, for that matter. And certainly, our subject matter experts here, Jeff and Manon, thank you, and to our audience, please make sure you get their contact information as well. A couple of housekeeping items. Use the chat function within GoToWebinar to ask questions, and we'll try to address those questions before we get off the webinar today. But if not, we'll certainly reach out to you after the webinar. And you'll also be receiving relevant links to some of the applications and sources and resources rather that we're going to discuss today. So really, when we talk about incident management, we're talking about the process, right? Process. And there are very few parts of this process that can't be supported by the use of GIS. And what you see here is a planning P that was developed by NAPSG, the National Association of Public Safety GIS, for USAR operations. And you can see, from the leg of the P to the operational O, nearly every step has some impact through the use of GIS. And again, that process, that framework for managing these incidents includes GIS as a support of that process or a part of that process. It allows us to gather data, put that data in a usable format and visual products that we can just then share with stakeholders and decision makers. It's really about getting the right data to the right person at the right time. And the strength of the ability to share that data is impressive in that it doesn't matter what agency you might be sharing to or with, doesn't matter what radio system a responder might be on, doesn't matter what kind of device they're using. As long as they have connectivity, you can share incident intelligence, verified data to help them make good decisions and keep their operations safe. And when we talk about that data, it's many types of data. So we could have visual imagery from satellites, fixed wing aircraft, or UAS, thermal hotspots from satellite resources, 3D models, and even local data like parcel data can be powerful as you make decisions on where to deploy resources and where the most need is during an incident or after a significant event. And we do that so that you can make good decisions, right? And understand not only what's happening, but where is it happening and who is it happening to. So here's an example from the Fire Department of New York, their Special Operations Command. They had a exercise involving an improvised explosive device simulated in a subway tunnel. But you can see here they were able to bring together data from their parcel layer, data from 3D building models, data from mobile applications in the field where the responders were dropping symbology where they were running into incident issues such as victim locations or hazards to the responders or the customers they're serving. And then LiDAR data, they actually had a mobile LiDAR unit walk through the tunnel and develop this 3D model of the incident area, of the operational area, and then they're able to share that with that task force leader or incident commander or ops section, within minutes after collecting this data. And you'll see a lot today. We'll talk about bringing this data together in an appropriate format and serving that up to our decision makers to help them guide us through this incident and establish or meet the objectives that were set for the incident. And where do we see this having an impact? I mean, not just disaster response, but any discipline, day-to-day operations, that type 4 to type 1 incident, GIS can have that impact. So whether it's a fire issue, a large special event, a law enforcement response, all of that can be impacted by the use of GIS. And we have resources that you already have access to that we'd like you to review as an action item. So take a look at our Living Atlas. Our Living Atlas provides thousands and thousands of layers that you can bring in right now to your visual products and help you tell that story, to help you set the operational information in front of those decision makers. And it provides not just static data, but live feeds such as weather, traffic, and the like that really can impact how your personnel are making decisions on the ground as they operate. Many of our partner agencies, such as FEMA and federal agencies, provide data. One way you can access some of this data is through our disaster response program, and that is a 24/7 support of you as you respond and prepare for or deal with these incidents. And you go to that website and make the request, and within minutes you'll get a response 24/7. It's also an excellent site to get resources on current incidents, maybe of a national significance, and then previous incidents that had data or applications rather that you can actually see here and demonstrate the impact of GIS on that data, or on that incident rather. And the federal resources we discussed, here's an example of the National Risk Index tool that down to a county level identifies the level of risk related to many different natural hazards. And you can start to see what the potential impact would be in specific localities, again, down to that county level with some of these significant incidents. And you can bring that data into your visual products as well. Another excellent tool is the RAP tool, Resilience Analysis and Planning tool, available that provides a lot of the HIFEL data and critical infrastructure locations along with other capabilities. So please take a moment and take a look at those resources as well. And then being able to enrich all of these products with some pretty significant demographic data. And here's an example of our community analyst and identifying an area on the map, operational area, maybe it's an evacuation zone or maybe it's a flood zone, and to be able to quickly see who is being impacted by these events. As an example here, this is an at-risk population analysis that gives us, total businesses impacted, number of households in the operational area, but it also tells us how many households within this area have disabilities we may have to deal with, non-speaking, very old, very young, non-English speaking, or households without vehicles, which to me is incredibly important when we're talking about, evacuations and moving a population out of a hazardous area. How many of those folks may not have a vehicle available to move or to self-evacuate? So again, incredible capabilities with the data available to you. And then we also can collect data from the field, from our personnel, human sensors in the field with applications like our collector app, our field maps, which is a new mobile application that combines a lot of great capabilities. Survey 123, which many of you may have seen is being adopted by the USAR community to use pretty regularly. Federal USAR teams and then INSARAG, our international USAR program, have adopted Survey 123 as a data collection tool that allows you to get that data back to a command post, back to a coordination center, operations center in seconds, as long as they have connectivity. And the applications also work without connectivity in a disconnected environment, allowing you to still collect that data and get it back to those decision makers for processing and sharing with stakeholders. UAS operations, obviously we're seeing more and more of that. Within ArcGIS, you can have solutions that are end-to-end. So from fleet management and flight planning to imagery processing, and then allowing you to share that easily across the response resources that you may be involved with for a given incident. Dashboards and story maps, how do we present that information? So we've collected all of our data, then how do we communicate? How do we share? And one of the common solutions we see used is our dashboards application. Many of you seen the Johns Hopkins COVID dashboard, the same exact technology we're talking about here, that you can easily integrate all these disparate data sources into a single view, and then modify it depending on who's viewing what, to see either a tactical level view or a strategic level view, but all using the same base information, the same data. So there's less duplication of effort and less of a lift to get those different views available and out to the people that need them. And our solutions page offers many, many off-the-shelf solutions to address public safety needs. And these are applications that you can download and start using today. Simply add your data, a little bit of configuration, and it's out there. And there's a section for law enforcement, there's a section for fire and EMS, there's a section for emergency management. So I encourage you to go to our solutions page and take a look at those applications that are available to you today to support things like wide area search, damage assessment, understanding the impacts of disasters such as flooding, hurricanes, earthquakes, and the like. And we can support you as a user with many different training programs and learning at a distance, virtual training opportunities, including up to and including in-person delivery of GIS training. So look at our training section. Many of the training programs available are free, and you can access them today to learn how to use these field mobile applications, how to set up a dashboard, and how to bring together all these disparate data sets that can support you during your response in the field. And with that, I'm going to turn it over to Fern, and she can coordinate with our subject matter experts, Jeff and Manon. Fern?
Thanks, Mike, for that overview. And those are some great examples on ways incident management teams can use GIS to improve their internal situational awareness. I had the privilege of working with Jeff and Manon this past summer and was so impressed. I wanted them to share some of what they do within their own incident management team that they're both part of for increasing internal intelligence, and to share some of their past experiences as well as what they were doing this past summer. So Jeff, I will hand it off to you.
All right, great. Thanks, Fern. As I mentioned earlier, I've been able to work in the incident management field for almost 20 years, from boots on the ground to an incident commander, in a variety of different incidents. All risk, all hazard incidents really in the federal service run the full gamut, from oil spills, large scale on isolated remote wilderness islands, to hurricane response, to wildfires. The scale that incident management teams can be deployed is vast, from local organizations to regional and national incidents that involve a multitude of partners. But they all share one common need, and that's for the need for intelligence, information sharing, and situational awareness. In the situation unit, we're responsible for collecting and organizing incident status and information, and evaluating and analyzing and displaying that information for use with members of the incident command team, the command and general staff, back out to the field, all the way up to agency administrators and the public. In the past, many of these products were mainly static map products, been on incidents where we've had deliverables of upwards of 50 to 60 different type of products, and required a large scale printing operation and lots of paper. But now it's become a multimedia discipline. We're able to utilize many of the ArcGIS online environment tools to provide for operational, environmental, administrative data sets, and gather them and transform them into a variety of products to many different audiences. The ArcGIS online environment provides a platform to assemble current information that's been vetted. There's open data sets and open data products within different agencies and with different organizations that are specialized for those incident responses. And then a lot of outside commercial products that are available within Esri that are of real time and can really enrich the level of intelligence used by incident personnel. A quick example up here up top, last week during a prescribed fire within my region, we were able to identify the prescribed fire while it was in process with local imagery. And that was without using any kind of UAS or drone, just from the local products within the Living Atlas. The Esri suite of applications is very malleable, and it provides our field-going folks a really large opportunity to collect incident-specific data. We can customize the tool sets. We're also able to use several different interactive tools within the Survey 123 and Collector to provide that feedback loop to decision makers. A lot of information can be collected and generated across platforms. And as I said before, the ability to display this information in the AGO environment for field use is greatly enriched by this. And the information can be tailored and quickly delivered to outside parties on the incident, such as cooperators, agency leadership, and government representatives for several different purposes. This information can be very helpful in recording data and data collection progress for many situations. We're able to, in the recent COVID incidents, we were able to work with the situation unit at our national office to provide status of our reporting information on our COVID-related information from the data being collected in the field. So we're able to do the QA/QC to see if we're able to get that information in a timely manner and provide for its accuracy. Recently, during Hurricane Harvey, we were able to deploy and preload our field staff with information for conducting damage assessments of Fish and Wildlife Service assets that were affected. The Hurricane Harvey really came in at the Aransas National Wildlife Refuge, and the eye of the storm was within 1 mile of the boundary of the refuge and affected it greatly. So in that process, we were able to deploy our field resources, rapidly collect information on damage assessments, and it allowed us to tailor our response needs in real time to understand what kind of responses we needed to send to the refuge in the incident. We were able to provide line officers with real-time information to brief agency overhead with dynamic displays instead of just verbal actions, and allowed structural engineers and facility personnel to assess damages and quantify losses remotely. Greatly expanding our collaboration and with other disciplines within the agency and limiting the need for putting people in the hazard zones. Some of the basics we can use on wildfires is we can identify through field collected means and aerial means what some of our burn severity is within the fire environment. And then that can preload a lot of our resource advisors and decision makers on what kind of responses they need to have for recovery. So one of the things we did this past summer is in looking at a lot of the tools that we had available to us, and really trying to educate and teach a lot of our incident management personnel what kind of applications that would be useful for them and provide a kind of a clearinghouse for all of that. We were able to use the new ArcGIS Experience Builder to kind of create a common operating platform, which is basically a landing spot for a lot of our intelligence products, and it vastly enriched the specificity of some of these apps. We identified that we could use this to preload a lot of information prior to an incident. Most of the relevant and current intelligence is able to be provided to response personnel prior to deployment and provide them with the tools that enrich their situational awareness. We were able to give folks intel on what the current situation was and provide them with some of the resources, some of the, like we talked about earlier in the Living Atlas, and some of the off-the-shelf products that would increase our situation in the field. You know, as a situation unit leader, I'm pretty excited how we can evolve this into the future and AGL products for incident use. You know, I'm lucky working with an excellent IMT that supports the innovation and guides us to making cohesive decision-making environment across all platforms. So with that, I'd like to transition the presentation to my blue team counterpart, GISS man and Dodd. He's often the one that keeps me grounded and lets me know when the ideas start getting out too far outside of the box. And so with that, I'll hand it over to Man.
Thank you, Jeff. All right, well, I want to start by talking about the National Interagency Fire Centers ArcGIS Online organization. This is GIS in the cloud, and it's what allows us to build these web mapping applications and manage the incident information. And this has been online for about the last 5 or 6 years, and every year it continues to provide more and more value to GIS folks and to the teams in general as it gets more exposure. And this web GIS architecture really lets us do some amazing things, not least of which is allowing GIS specialists to support the teams and incidents remotely. I worked more fire assignments last year than I ever have before, and I never left my basement. And that's a really big deal. It really helps us, support the team in a holistic manner from wherever we are. I'm also part of the training cadre associated with the Geospatial Training Unit of the National Wildfire Coordinating Group. And I want to give a little plug to the courses that are online now. The GISS introductory course is up and running. It's self-guided and online, so you can do that up until August of this year. There will be a GISS refresher course for qualified GIS coming up soon. And there's a wildfire response GIS group as part of Esri's GeoNet, where all of this information is supplied, and there are lots of forums where you can talk to other GIS specialists, any questions you might have. So I'm excited to share how we've started to use this geospatial infrastructure to increase situational awareness across all of our teams, or all of our team sections. And so we created a common entry page using Experience Builder. And this is folks are able to access these applications that are being used for the current assignment. So we can change which applications are linked to this page, but the team members will have a consistent landing page. They know that this is what's being used on this incident, and they can always go there. So in the past, we have had what we call standard map products. These are typically designed for each section, and they have a standard set of information layers on those maps. And I see these applications as kind of the evolution of that. So these are more standard application products is how I see these. So that the operations map is going to have the same data layers from incident to incident, the same tools available to them, so that it's all very familiar, and they keep coming back to the same place, getting that same access for that. These applications also have many other added benefits to the static map products. The first of which is just increased situational awareness due to the data being current. You have access to the latest information available within our fire event information system. These mapping products are really flexible, so we can have each map is a reusable markup map because you can draw on it. You have a draw tool. You can then snap a picture of it. You can export a JPEG of your specific drawing over top of the map. The print tool can produce a mobile georeference map that you can then use on your phone and see where you are on top of it. You can customize these maps. You can turn layers on and off and change the reference base map underneath. Then you can then share that customized map using the share tool so that other people can see exactly what you're looking at. The search tool can be set up so that you can just type in DP100 and find that drop point. Same thing for HeliSpots or any other fire information you might be interested in. Then there are also the on-demand reports and analysis that we can provide with these applications as well. Things like ownership acreage across the fire or length of line by repair status. These are all common products that we can provide on demand with these tools. So I'll start with a couple of general overview applications, our traffic and weather applications. And the traffic app was designed to have live traffic and directions to and around the incident. So basically just Google Maps, but with the fire information there. And it was just one of the first ones I did, and it was pretty obvious that this would be useful for folks as they are arriving at the incident. And so it should be updated before anybody leaves. As soon as we get the assignment, I can come in and update this application. And as we started talking and doing more of these, we kind of realized that really we can do that with all of these applications and have them ready to go by the time the team hits the ground. They have all of these tools available for them. The weather application has, there's just a wealth of weather information available from NOAA, the Living Atlas that Esri has. And for this particular one, we have satellite information from the VIIRS and MODIS satellites for hotspots. There's a smoke forecast layer in there. And we also have the weather observation survey that NIFC provides that allows us to capture weather observations around the fire using Collector and Survey 123. And the idea here is to increase our collaboration and coordination with the incident meteorologists and fire behavior analysts so that we can take some of their model results and get this into this system as well so that it's all in one spot. Our operations application was designed as a digital briefing map, and we have bookmarks for each of the divisions so that it's easy to navigate around and talk to each division's plan for the day. We were able to collaborate with our operations chief a bit with this and added a few more layers that at his request. We had fire history and hazardous fuels treatments, and that aided in their operational planning on a daily basis. Our AirOps application provides the fire data on top of aviation layers, things like military training routes and aeronautical charts. It also provides an easy way to give them their fire point coordinates table. They want to know where all of these different fire points are on the map, and they need to have that coordinate information in decimal minutes. And so with the attribute table tool there at the bottom, you can easily download that information. And again, it's going to be the most current information available at any time. A couple of custom tools for the AirOps is that coordinate conversion tool so that they, no matter what coordinate system they get a point in, they can easily convert it into decimal minutes. And an add data tool that makes it really easy to add shape files or KMLs from your local machine onto this map. Our logistics app does a similar thing for the fire point coordinates for the accountable property and how that gets managed. And the logistics folks are always having a hard time trying to keep up with where everything is. There are just so much property out there that having a map and a way to see the status of that information and is really helpful. We also created a training, kind of an orientation to the application, a little video. It kind of gives an overview, and I think we're probably going to do more of those as we work with our team. All right, now getting into some of the reporting and analysis. This is a suppression repair application, and this is part of our efforts to expand collaboration with resource advisors. And resource advisors are typically local agency staff that are responsible for managing and monitoring any repairs of suppression activities that are needed. And they need to be able to do this even after the incident management teams have left. And what this app does is allows those resource advisors to be able to view and update the repair status of any of the fire points or lines. And we had couple of GIS trainees on site, Paige Gebhardt and Greg Slezak, that really did a great job working with the resource advisors and developing this after it was initially designed. And that's why we have such a great little tutorial there on the left, is because they were able to spend some time with the resource advisors and understand their level of comfort with these tools. And in this particular case, this application and the underlying map was transitioned back to the local resources and was continued to be used even after all the IMTs had left. So as a result of that increased collaboration with the resource advisors, we were exposed to this zone repair zone summary layer. So I'd never seen zone for repair before. And so we wanted to find a quick way to get summaries within these zones of all of the fire events. And so we started with the situation awareness tool. And this is a fantastic tool. You can provide summaries for any area feature. And of course, in this case, we're using the repair zones. But you can get a summary of whatever information is within that area based on whatever attributes you have available. So here we're curious as to how many points are there within that zone and what is their repair status. It also works on line features, and we got here all of the lines that intersect this particular zone, and we get a count of the different types of lines that they are here. But as you can see from those lines that are highlighted there, we can't get the line length within that area using this tool. So we wanted to be able to get that report so that we knew the length of line within each of these. And so to do that, we turn to the analysis tool. This is a fantastic tool. There are tons of options that different analyses that you can run within this little tool here. We use the summarize within for fire points and fire lines. And it creates a new layer with summary information. And that data is displayed in the attribute list and in charts in the feature pop-up on the map. You can also see that that summary table is available there at the bottom, and you can download that summary information there. I also wanted to be able to visualize that summary information within this application. And so we use the summary charts tool to allow us to have a more chart view of that information. And you can, make different types of charts for the different data. So it's pretty handy. But we do know that a better way of displaying that type of information is with the dashboards, and we really do love the dashboards and have used several of them to help summarize what is going on with the different sections and on the different fires. And so those are some of the highlights of what we were able to do last year, and I'm really excited to coordinate the next iteration of development with our command and general staff. And so I encourage you to think about how the situation unit can help the team accomplish its mission using this ArcGIS online environment and these tools and applications. I'm really looking forward to building out that common platform for incident intelligence. I'll hand it back to Fern now. Thank you.
Thanks, Manon. I have a couple of things I want to point out about, I guess, thanks, Jeff, as well, about all of the great tools that you both just shared with us. I think the apps are great. I loved watching some of them kind of evolve throughout their use last summer. I think the conditions of how we were having to work last summer while being remote, having more people at a distance and less people at the incident command post really added a challenge, but really kind of allowed these apps to be highlighted and used to their full extent. I think the zone summaries especially, but the way that it helped keep, I guess, folks reusing them, because it minimized that impact on the situation unit directly. Once people knew where to go, there was a TV set up with a number of those apps from the experience builder that Manon showed at the start of his section, where folks could come in and scroll through them. They were kind of always on a rotation where they would switch and the next one would display. But I saw local resources, agency staff, fire staff, people who were not necessarily part of the IMT come through, as well as those who were part of the IMT and were not always in camp. So it was hugely valuable, and they could come in and look at those apps, interact with them, and not have to come and ask the same questions of the situation unit that they often get repetitively. I also wanted to point out an app that Jeff had on his screen. It was a strategic operations app, and in a different room that was away from the planning section, there was a large projector screen, and there was this app. It was a web app builder app with all kinds of different data on it, and every single time I walked past that room, Jeff was talking with operations and other people were in the room, kind of coming and going and really analyzing the current state of affairs on the incident. And it had as near real-time information as we could possibly have in there, and it was really kind of driving discussions and allowing people to turn on and off layers and interact with things as soon as we had that information to add to the map. So it was I think it was a fantastic way to see how all of these things were being used to improve intelligence while on the incident. And so I'm thankful that Manon and Jeff could join us and share those. We will move on to a demonstration, and Renee is going to show us how we can make a couple of applications that can be used for improving situational awareness. Renee?
Thank you, Fern. So as Fern mentioned, we saw some amazing examples from both Jeff and Manon, and I'd like to show you how some of these are created. So we're going to start by looking at ArcGIS Online and looking initially at a web map. So what you see here is a web map that I've put together and collected several different hosted feature layers. Some of these are from the open Highfeld layers, including the private schools, public schools, nursing homes, hospitals, and your local EOCs. There's also a layer in here that you're seeing with these orange icons and symbology that is our detected threats. This is a layer that we get from one of our partners, Data Capable. But if I wanted to add additional layers in, I can search for layers within different areas. As previously mentioned about the Living Atlas, I can go into the Living Atlas and put in stream gauges. And by putting in stream gauges, I can search to see what I have. Now, one of the keys of looking at the Living Atlas is we want to look for several things. We want to look at who has published it, but also look at the two icons at the bottom. This first one that we see, which is blue with the globe with the line through it, this shows that it's Living Atlas. It's coming from the Living Atlas, but this was curated by Esri. The second one we look at is this green check. This shows that it's recommended by Esri and it's gone through QA/QC and has been put in as an authoritative source. And then we can see at the bottom, there's also this one that's a little shield. And these are layers that are specific to subscribers. So you have your basic Living Atlas layers that anybody can access, and then there's what we call premium access that allows you to get some of these layers in here. So I've already added the stream gauges in here, and you can see I've filtered them just to our area. So we're going to focus on the National Capital Region, which is Maryland, DC, and Virginia. I've also pulled in weather. And you can see we have a nice system coming through the area right now. I can actually hear it outside my window. So this is a good storm coming through. As previously mentioned, we also had the World Traffic Service in here. So we can see what the traffic is like as well. So what I've done is I've saved this and I wanted to push it out to an application. So I'm going to create a web application. We have a bunch of configurable apps. We can put this into a dashboard. In this case, I want to do a web app builder. Web app builder is an application that allows you to build a web application without coding. So what's really nice is I've gone ahead and I've thrown this web map into web app builder, as you see here. And we can see those same layers that we previously had are here within there, our map. I've got our incidents, our detected threats here, so that data capable layer we were talking about. I can pick up and click on an item, and we can see that this was a structure fire. It occurred on the 20th. So this is going to give us all incidents that happened, in the week, but also incidents that are happening, currently. So we can see here, this is from the 23rd, and we can see that this was a bomb threat, and this was down in Hampton, Virginia. So this is some great information to kind of give you that overall situational awareness that we have. I'm going to go ahead and close this window off to the side, and I want to talk about the widgets. The nice part about Web App Builder is it provides 40 plus out-of-the-box widgets that you can utilize. And some of these are situational awareness, the emergency response guide, as well as the threat analysis. We previously heard about the situational awareness, and I would love to show you a little bit of how that works. So here I've got my incident. I can put in my buffer of 30 miles. I can zoom into an area, and we can see that we want to take a look at Leesburg. So I'm going to drop a point in Leesburg, Virginia. It's actually going to be on 10 West Market Street. And because I put in that buffer of 30 miles, all those layers that I previously mentioned, the private schools, public nursing homes, and hospitals, it's going to tell me which of these schools are the closest to that incident point. It's going to give me the approximate distance, the name, and the location. So we have that for the private schools, the public schools, as well as the nursing homes and the hospitals. Now that we have this information, this is great. We want to be able to share this. So I can actually download all of this data and share this out. But I can also take this web map and I can stick it into Community Analyst. And with Community Analyst, we can go into and get additional information. So I want to, take a look at finding a location here. So I'm going to put in an address. We're going to put 8615 Westwood Center Drive. This is the Esri office in Northern Virginia. And we can see here that I can then, put in my rings of my buffers. So I currently have 1, 3, and 5. I'm going to make this 1, 5, and 10. And I'm going to apply these bands. Now that I've applied these bands, I can take a look at those infographics to get that information that we want to take a look at. Mike mentioned this earlier about the infographics. So if I click on infographics, this is going to pull those demographics from the area. It initially will give me my key facts of total businesses and total employees, and then I can pick and choose what I want to look at. So I'm going to look at the at-risk population within this area. So it's going to show me that there are a little over 1,300 total businesses. With those 1,300 businesses, there's over 30,000 employees. We also have we have 889 homes with individuals with disabilities, and we also have 66 homes without vehicles. So in the event that there's an incident and we need to evacuate, we may need to give additional assistance to these 66 households where there's no vehicles. We can also take a look at the population based on the different languages that are spoken and the individuals that are 65 or older, and also children under 14. So this is just one of the many options that we have available to us within Community Analyst to gather additional demographics about our incident location. So with that, I'm going to turn it back over to Mike.
Thank you, Renee. Great demonstration. One thing I wanted to point out is, the analysis that Renee was running was not terribly different than what Manon and Jeff were speaking of, and doing this type of analysis on data enrichment within a map based on some kind of polygon, right? So it doesn't necessarily have to be a buffer. It could have been a flood zone, or it could have been an evacuation area, or much like the areas that Manon was describing for their recovery efforts and environmental protection efforts. So we do have a few questions available from the audience. And Fern, I'm going to throw one at you right off the bat about NIFC and some of the data available for NIFC. And the question is, there are some cases where fire perimeter disappeared from the wildfire service. Are there plans with NIFC or others to standardize and ensure consistent reporting so not have critical data disappear?
Okay, Mike, I think that's in reference to the publicly viewable perimeter layer, and we will be talking about some of the public-facing maps a bit more in our third webinar in this series. And the sharing of the perimeters is the responsibility of the incident management team or the authoritative agency on that incident. It is part of the national feature service that the fire community uses, but it can be occasionally unshared. And so we saw that a couple times, not very often last year, as people were learning the workflow and kind of getting their heads around that. I don't anticipate that being something that comes up very frequently. It's kind of an accident when a perimeter does get unshared.
Understood. Thank you, Fern.
Yep.
So this, I think it was Manon that was describing his logistics planning application. So Manon,
Yes.
can you configured that based on Experience Builder, I believe it was, or can you describe how you came about that planning application?
Sure. The logistics app, and actually almost all of the ones that I showed were done using the web app builder and just customizing it through those tools.
Okay, great. All right. Yeah, there was a question about updating it, and I just want to make sure that the audience understood that was something that you configured, specific for your IMT operations, and it wasn't one of our solutions. Another question is, what was the base map and the air ops map?
Those are aeronautical charts from the FAA. That's the typical aviation view of things, I guess would be how to say it.
Understood.
And where did you find that layer? Is that a nationally available layer, or did you publish it just for that fire?
No, it's nationally available. It's not something I had to make myself.
Thank you.
Excellent. Fern, also back to you and Manon and Jeff. Is there a national level geospatial coordination working group? The tools that the question goes on to describe the tools that you demonstrated, Manon and Jeff, were amazing. But how do state and local and regional teams understand or learn about these tools and when they're applied, and how can they get access to some of this information?
Manon, you want to take that one?
The NIFC org is available for all type 1 down to type 5 incidents, I believe. And so you would just need to work with NIFC to get an account and get access to it.
Yeah, so there is a working group on the national level for wildland fire. If you're primarily working in other hazards, there's not quite the level of standardization across other types of incidents, but what I see a lot are folks using the templates and the standards and kind of some of the workflows that have been set up and really well defined for fire across other types of responses. And so a lot of that is hosted on the National Wildfire Coordinating Group webpage.
Okay, great. And let's see. So to Jeff and Manon, you obviously set these apps up and then you apply them at the individual incidents that could be significantly different from deployment to deployment. So you could be clearing from a wildland issue fire and go to a hurricane, 2 weeks later. How hard is it to prepare, from one incident to another, or how flexible is it to apply those applications? Is there a lot of preparation once you have them set up, or are they pretty flexible as far as application?
I can take that. Certainly, if we're going to be going to a hurricane, we're going to have different applications than if we're going to a fire. But oftentimes we're going from one fire to another fire, and so in that case, it should be fairly easy, and the intent is to make it as easy as possible for us to adjust just the map extents and any filters we may have on the data for a particular incident. And I'm working on a Python notebook to try to make that an automated process so that as soon as we get it, I can get the new location of the incident and then just be able to type that in and update all of our applications. But even as it is now, if I had to do it by hand, it would probably take a day to get everything ready to go for the next one.
And one thing to note is that since Manon created these using Web App Builder, he can do a save as. And so if an app needs to be left behind with the local agency or with an incident management team that's coming in following his team, then he can save a copy and leave one behind and take the next one to their next incident.
That's great. That was actually another question, Fern, was related to transitioning between teams, because as we know, that's one of the
It's a
most
challenge.
dangerous times to manage an event, right? Because
Yes.
personnel and tracking personnel and the like. Certainly, the ability to easily hand off these apps that have been in place with data, based on real incident intelligence, is critical. Is to be able to pass that on to the incoming team, as you transition out of your deployment. It's a great point, Fern.
Yeah, it is. It's really important to be able to have that in your mind as you're arriving on an incident. Is already, even the first day you get there, is how am I going to hand everything that I make off to either the local agency if you're the last team there, or to the next team that's coming in, because that is a challenge, and too often it's left too late in the timeline and becomes a bit of a snafu or a snag.
So are there any plans on discontinuing the NIFC FTP site and transition to their AGL org? Have you heard anything on that, Fern?
We're not probably the right folks to ask that question to.
Understood.
I would direct that to the NWCG, would probably be able to answer that question for you.
Understood. Very good. And we had a question about USAR. I'm not sure exactly what it was. We do see a great deal of use, similar to what's been presented here today in the USAR setting, particularly after hurricanes and tornadoes, earthquakes, and the like. But the field mobile application use has skyrocketed. And again, with our international and domestic teams now using Survey 123 as a primary data collection application. And so, yeah, a lot of use in the USAR. We have some great demonstrations. So if anybody needs to reach out for some content, we'll add a couple links in the email that follows this webinar to send out.
And then our next webinar in this series is April 14th, and that one we will be talking around mobile devices and operations, and really kind of more in line with that field data collection. But for USAR, for hurricanes, I mean, I know these apps were very specific to fire, but you can think of them as being applicable for the other cases, and with probably the addition of damage assessment or sheltering and evacuations added in.
Yeah, great point, Fern. Yeah, so today, obviously, we focused on gathering that data and developing that incident intelligence to support decision-making and situational awareness. And it's, obviously the SIT unit is the major player in that process and the planning section. The next one that Fern mentioned, you see on your screen now, April 14th, will focus on operations, field operations, mobile applications, and the like. So if you're registered for this one, you'll get a notice, you're registered for the rest of the series, but please push this out, to any of your peers that you may feel, would be appropriate to attend these webinars. And then after operations, we're going to have one on public information and stakeholder engagement. And then finally, the series wraps up with tips and technical resources from our disaster response program, which will provide, obviously, a lot of sources and resources to put together some of these applications for significant events. So with that, again, I want to thank Jeff and Manon for joining us today. Excellent presentation, great content, and want to make sure that everyone has our contact information, which I'm putting back up now. So please make a note, and you will be receiving an email with these email addresses as well. But feel free to reach out at any time, particularly to the Esri personnel, if you have any needs. Any questions that were not addressed at the end of the webinar, we will be reaching out by email to answer your questions, because we did have a few that we did not get to today. So again, thank you for spending some time with us today. We look forward to seeing you again in April for the operational webinar, and everyone stay safe. Thank you.